Hello, everyone. It's Kathleen at Level Up Your English, and welcome to, I think this is episode number 14. So, congratulations for sticking with me this far. Tonight, we're going to continue the topic of business English basics, and we're going to talk specifically about communication in the workplace. And by that, I mean a few things. We are going to talk about emails and what is expected with emails and how to make that work. We're also going to talk about the basic expectations about how people expect you to communicate with them. And then we're going to go into communicating in meetings. So obviously there's tons of stuff we could talk about. And some of this you might have heard, but I'd like to take it a little further and kind of dig into really what is meant by the terms. You hear it a lot, but nobody ever really explains it very well, or they don't take it any further. And so you're kind of left floundering. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So, and then for the remainder of the year, there's just next week, I'll do the midnight and the noon lives. And then we're going to stop till, I don't know, the second week in January, I think. Might be a little longer, but I'll start back in January, but just going to take a little bit of time off for the holidays. And again, I'm super close to, I'm trying to launch my something special for you that I like to make. I like to call it my something special for you. I have announced to my subscribers, I'll just tell you right now real quick, but you won't get details until January. But I am putting together a course for you. And this is when I first offer it. It's going to be live with me 12 weeks. And again, I'll go into more detail about it. But for the first 10 people, there's going to be a super duper price on it. And then it will go up to its final price. But anyway, you'll get all the details on that later. But I'm just going to take the rest of December to just really focus on finishing that up and getting it built out for you. So anyway, and getting all the details ready to go so that I can fill you all in January. Okay. So, yeah. All right. So if you didn't watch last week's Business English Basics episodes, there were 2 of them. And again, I broke it down. Let me just get my notes from last week. So last week we talked about the cultural overview of why Americans do business the way they do, why they behave the way they do, why they think the way they do as far as business is concerned. So the first part, which would be the midnight live, talked about the origins and development of the attitude and the culture in business in America that we have today. And then the second part, which was the noon live stream, that was about modern business culture. So what you would deal with today. So I do recommend that you watch those 2 at some point close to this, but definitely watch them because a lot of times it's such a good idea to get an understanding of why people do what they do, why they behave the way they do, why they respond the way they do. Many of my students, when dealing with American folks in business, they think, well, why were they so rude to me? Why was this? Why was that? I don't understand. I'm confused. Did I do the wrong thing? And if we understand how, a person's background, just, in your daily life, if you have someone who's in a bad mood or who's grumpy and whatever, and maybe they always seem to be grumpy, maybe they're just grumpy that day, and that's the first day you met them, you know, there's a very good reason why they are the way they are. And once you understand that on that personal level, then you know how to say, oh, then you can relax and say, oh, it wasn't me. They were just in a car accident or something, or, they just got bad news, or maybe they got good news and they're in a great mood, but they're not usually. So it's great on a personal level. It's important on a personal level to understand, what's going on with a person in your native culture. So why would that be any different when you're dealing with a different culture? It's actually more important because you need to know what to look for. You need to know the signs to read. You need to know, um, is this just a normal thing in the culture, or is this something really, were they really rude to me? So it's important to learn these things. So that's what we're going to do today. All right, so the basic expectations in the workplace, if you're dealing with an American person in business, is just be direct and get down to business. We're not a culture who does a lot of warm up and personal niceties first. And again, I've explained this in many times, that we didn't have the luxury when the country was being developed, when people first came to the country. And I really think about this a lot ever since I've been teaching this, and you know delving into the 360-degree view of the English speaking culture, and particularly the American English speaking culture, is that, in Europe and the other continents, they had been living their lives together separately, developing inter national relations and international relations communities for thousands and thousands of years. And everybody knew about everybody else. The people in England knew that there was a wider world, that there were other people in, far, far away. And, information got around about the different types of peoples and cultures out there. And all of them were thousands of years old. But when people came to Americas, or the Americas, um, the continents of North America, South America, except for the people who lived there, that nobody else knew about. Nobody knew that these two whole vast continents existed. And so it was a completely new world. We're not kidding when we say the new world. So nobody knew how to deal with a lot of the stuff. And a lot of the stuff that people had to deal with directly affected whether you lived through the day or not. And so everybody had to just get down to business and survive the day. And you had to help people out. So there were no hierarchical barriers. And in so many ways, everyone was treated the same, because you just had to help each other survive. And you had to get your business done first, then you could socialize. And so that has carried through our few centuries that we've been a nation and a culture. And so, it's just nothing that anyone had ever encountered. And so everyone had to try to figure out how to live together and survive the day, and then build a community, build a nation on that. And so that has carried through to this very day, even though, and we're constantly getting people from other cultures still coming. But it hasn't, even though we've had, all of this new influences, or these new influences in even though in this day and age we know about, you know, all the other cultures around the world, it doesn't somehow eliminate our core initial developmental stage. It doesn't wipe out all of the things, that all those characteristics that really settled themselves in when we first settled the area. And so we expect you just be direct. Tell me what you need to tell me. Tell me the essentials. We get down to business. And then once business is done, then we can relax and get to know each other better and build that relationship. So if that's not what your culture is, understand that and really practice doing that. Get the practice that you need. Come here live, ask me your questions, and we'll get them answered. And if we need to if I can give you examples, or bring me an example and ask me what was going on here. Is this rude? Were they, what should I have done? Did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? Ask me here. That's why I'm here. So be direct and get down to business. You always want to be polite. So, we have to know, we have to get to know how to be respectful, what people, oh my goodness, I completely lost my train of thought. But, there is the level of respect, and there are manners, your everyday common manners in English. But speak your mind. Speak your mind. And the second thing is know what you're talking about. So many people in the business world, and I'm sure it's similar in other cultures, but in the American business culture, there are so many people who just don't bother to know what they're talking about, and they like to just kind of go along for the ride, do the minimum that they can do to get through the day, get their paycheck, and then go live their lives. But it's not helpful, and people get annoyed even though they know it happens all the time. And they might be annoyed at someone who's doing it, but they might be doing it themselves. So just know what you're talking about. And if you don't know what you're talking about, if you're not familiar with a term, or if you're just coming in the middle of a project, ask the questions that you need to ask and get to know what you're talking about. Don't try to fake it, because people see right through it, and they might play along with you, and you might move up the ladder, but people see through it. So just know what you're talking about. Number one, it's just so helpful in being productive. And number two, it's really going to make you stand out, and people are going to say, oh wow, she knows what she's talking about. He knows what he's talking about. I'm going to go ask that person. I'm going to ask him. I'm going to go ask Carl, whatever the case may be. You're really going to stand out, even if your language even if your fluency level isn't up to par. If you can show that you know what you're talking about at whatever level of fluency you have, the lack of any fluency will be overlooked, and people will respect you for knowing what you're talking about. Excuse me. I don't know what's been going on with my voice lately. Excuse me. And then thirdly, this just as far as basic expectations. Thirdly, make it short, sweet, and to the point. And by that I mean, don't go on forever. Don't try to over-explain anything. Just give me the details. Be nice about it. Present it in a way that the listener is going to receive well. So you have to know the person that you're talking about. You have to know how they work. Be observant in the office or in your dealings. If you're dealing with video calls or through emails, be observant about how that person interacts, and then structure your communications accordingly so that that person will receive it well. All right. A lot of people don't pay attention to how the people around them work, and they approach a topic in a manner that's going to put that other person on edge or on in a defensive mode. So pay attention to the people around you and how they like to receive information, and also how they give information too. Because again, communicating between people, excuse me, in even in your own language, is um, it's just so personal, and each person works differently and um, receives messages differently, again, because of their experience, because of what they've grown up with, what they've, had to deal with in other jobs, maybe, and how other people have treated them or their ideas or whatever. So find out about the people that you're dealing with. And a lot of that can happen through your observations, and just be smart about it. So that's what I mean by that's what is meant when we say short, sweet, and to the point. Just, you know, and to the point, that part means just tell me what I need to know. What are the basics? What are the essentials? And don't go getting all flowery about it. Just tell me what I need to know, and kind of why I need to know it, so that I can make my decision, and then we can move on. So those are critical, and that's really going to help you in communicating in a business environment. So, um, yeah. I mean, sometimes you can't. Sometimes the topic needs some explanation. But even if you have a long explanation, make sure that you're not just going overboard with the words, and make sure that every word you say has a purpose and is going to move the message forward, or, present it well. People don't like, Americans don't like flowery stuff. We're not necessarily poetic people in our business world, certainly. Um, Outside, that's different, but in the business world, you're not here to impress with your, with your poetic side, or your ultra creative side, if it has no purpose. We need a purpose. We don't like, because then we feel like our time is being wasted. And we don't have time to waste. We're trying to survive here. Okay. Once we know the job is done and we're safe and secure, then we can do the poetry and the personal things. So we always remember that the American mind is really, we need the essentials. We need enough information to be able to make an informed decision, and we don't like to waste time in getting to that information. So, and that's a form of respect in the American mind, by doing things directly like that, keeping it, giving you everything you need up front in a way that is going to make sense and be orderly, and show you why something works or why it won't work, or what your recommendation is. Doing that up front, that says to me, the American business person, that you're respecting me and my time. And again, I've mentioned this in one of the other videos, that to us, time is money. And that ties into the American dream. If you're wasting my time, you're wasting money. I could be applying my time in a different way that would get me closer to that American dream, that kind of a thing. So really keep that in mind. And it's not, we're not, we're not being rude in that mindset, because of the origins of that characteristic. We're actually respecting your time. So that's our mindset. So, again, this is where it's critical that you think in English. You think in the language of the people that you're trying to communicate with. So, again, I'm learning Korean. So, if I'm trying to speak to someone who is Korean, then I need to think in their mindset. And I've said before, for me, the sentence structure is very difficult for me because I come from a highly, what is it? It's a low context. English is a low context language because we don't rely on context. What's the environment, what's being talked about, all of these situational things that have a bearing on what a word means. We have so many words to use that we don't need to rely on context, and we don't have the time, again, we don't have the time to spend in hoping you understand the message. We need to make sure that you understand the message. So, again, I lost my point there, but again, short, sweet, to the point. And that's where respecting your time by being as concise as we can. All right. So now let's talk about emails. So again, the emails need to be clear and concise, because in a business, just in your everyday life, how many emails you have in your inbox. I have so many emails, and so many of them I really would love to read, but I don't have time. And so, I need to know, okay, I'm a big skimmer of emails. I look for the important words, and I look for, okay, is this going to be worth my time to read a 7-minute email? If not, and most of that, if you notice, when Americans write emails, particularly in the business world, that key information is right in that first paragraph or two. Usually the emails will say, hello, so and so. Sometimes we don't even worry about the hellos. It's just, um, especially if it's a reply to an email, we don't bother with the formalities of a written letter. It's just, oh, in response to your question, this, that, or the other thing. And or you'll see, I'm writing in response to, or I'm writing to let you know, or things like that. Right up front, we tell you why we're writing, and then we get into the meat of things. So if you, again, think in those terms, give the important stuff right in that first paragraph or two. Don't go beyond that. Whatever you can. I'm pointing at the box here on the live stream, but whatever you can see on the, what do you call it, the fold, above the fold, I guess is what they call it, as if a folded newspaper. So whatever you can see right without scrolling, that's what I was trying to get at. All the critical information should be right there before the person has to scroll. And it's helpful if you have a subject line that says exactly what it's about. Then they can say right away, okay, I need to save this. I need to read this now, or I need to read it later. That's not as important. So again, with the emails, make them clear, make them concise, and keep your emotions out of them. Okay. Many times, so many times, people's emotions flare up. Like, I can't believe they didn't understand me, or that's not what I was expecting as a response, and why are you even Americans to each other? We can get snippy, we're human beings, and so we tend to let our emotions kind of take over when we're replying to emails, and so don't do that. Just keep the emotions out of it, and you'll be much more effective. Um, unless it's necessary. Some emails require a certain amount of emotion, but you always want to be respectful. And again, you want to be clear and concise, and especially if you do need to be firm, or if it is an angry email, it's you really want to think those through before you send anything. So this is a clue. This is a bonus tip. When you're replying to an email, it's super helpful if you put it in a Word document, and you'll hear this all the time. Because put it in a Word document. Don't respond right away within the email. Don't reply right away. Put your answer in a Word document so that you don't take a chance on accidentally hitting send when it's not ready to be sent. And also, if it's in the Word document, you can sit with it, and you can get your emotions out on the Word document. Go take a break, go do something else, and then come back to it in a little bit. And then you can read it through, and you can say, oh, is this going to cause more problems? So what do I need to do here to make this an effective communication? What do I need to do here to use the words, use the style, use whatever it is that's going to help the person that I'm writing to hear the message and accept the message and not get defensive and really understand the situation. So that's a super helpful tip. It's fine to write an angry response, but do it on a Word document or a Google document or something, just not in that email. And then go back to it and look through it and change whatever words need to be changed. And again, the style, look at the style. And if it's just a one person, really, really focus on that person and how they will receive it best, and not just when they read it, oh, okay, blah, blah, blah. How is that message going to, how are you going to construct that message so that it walks the reader through whatever process you need them to go through, so that they can absorb the message and then slow down, and that will help them to think the message through and think the situation through, and calm down and step back from the emotion of the situation. In business, that's a really great skill to have. And if you'd like me to help you with that, talk to me. Put it in the comments. Ask me anything about that. If you have a specific situation that you're able to share without giving away, personal stuff or things you shouldn't be giving away, but enough to give me a general idea of it, and you want me to do a live about it, I'm happy to do a live about it. If you want me to coach you on it personally, let me know in the chat, and I will connect with you, and we can talk about that. I'd love to help you. Remember, I don't know if you know, I'm a writer as well, and so um, and so yeah, I'm a writer as well. I'm an editor, so I'm here for you on that. All right, so I'm happy to help you there, but really think about how you're constructing your emails. so that the person that you're writing it to will be able to absorb the message and go through the process that you need them to go through, that thought process. Um, okay, so, and again, here with the emails, don't try to be clever or fancy, because I used to work with one girl, one woman. She was young. She was new into the business world at that time, and she was insecure, and she was smarter than she thought, but she was just really insecure about her ability to do this whole business world thing. And so she would try to use what I term fancy words. There's my air quotes, fancy words that she thought made her look smart, but because it wasn't how she normally spoke, people knew that it was a smoke screen and that she was just trying to cover up, and she was trying to be something that she wasn't, and it just never works. So don't try to be fancy. Don't try to be clever. Be smart. Use your intelligence. Use your expertise and your knowledge, and just put it out in a simple, intelligent way. And don't go using, 10 words when you only need two. Find the best word for the job within whatever time frame you have to get it, to get the email out, the message out. Um, but just choose the words that demonstrate your knowledge, your skill, your expertise, in your understanding of the situation, so that people see right away that you're smart, that you know what you're talking about. Where's back up to number one, people expect you to know what you're talking about. This is a way to prove it. Choose the right word for the job. In English, you have so many words to choose from. Because it's a language that deals heavily with nuance. We have, you know, synonyms, words that mean similar things, but those words all take a look at one concept from different angles. And so it really helps you to be able to fine tune your message. And there are words that work better in some situations than the word you thought you would use. So dig into the words a little bit. Find out if there's a better word for it within whatever time you have to do that. And you're really going to stand out if you can do that and you take the time to do that. So the other thing too is, show respect, be professional, and don't take things personally. Again, it's getting used to the different cultures. And again, in American business, we can tend to seem brusque and abrupt, and it can feel rude, because again, we have number one, in today's business world, there's so much that everybody has to get done, and we so much on our plate. Think of a heaping plate of food, and your job is to consume it all, within a time frame. And so you're just trying to figure out, how am I going to do this? So again, there's another reason why we need it short, sweet, and to the point. Be direct, be concise, and then move on. Get down to business and move on. Um, but still show respect and be professional. This is not a time to, you're not a teenager anymore, and so the language and your demeanor, your approach to things, just be professional, be adult, be professional. Don't take it personally, okay? And so then the next thing on meetings, I know I have gone over, I'm sorry, but again, it's important. Business, this is most of what you spend your day on is business. And so, earning a living and making a better life for your family and yourself. So um, with meetings, be on time. Now, so many, you will find that, people say, okay, I have a 10 o'clock meeting, and you'll show up to the meeting at 10, just before 10, and the meeting is 15 minutes late. People talk, there's a lot of chit chat going on. It takes a while to settle down and get going with the meeting, or the person who's running the meeting is late or whatever. But regardless of what anybody else is doing, be on time, because as much as we don't respect that line, in a sense, there's a lot of fluidity. It seems like there's a lot of fluidity, but there really isn't. We resent it as employees. I don't know how many meetings I've been to where my coworkers and we've gotten there a little early. We've come prepared. We know what needs to happen, and the person running it will be late, or other people will be late, and it's just, so it seems like there's a lot of leeway, but people resent it. And I used to come out of so many meetings, and my colleagues and I would say, couldn't you have put this in an email? You wasted an hour of my time when I could have been finishing that project, or this, that, or the other thing. So even though it might seem like people don't take it seriously, they do. Be on time, be prepared, and you might have heard all the time, you have to contribute. You're expected to speak your mind. You're expected to, speak up. And if you have a solution, if you have a suggestion, contribute to that, contribute to the meeting, contribute to the conversation. But don't just throw at anything. Really be thoughtful about your contribution. And just make sure that what you're contributing is valuable. All right. So don't just speak up for the sake of speaking up, to say, oh, well, I spoke up in the meeting, I did really well. Make sure, again, this goes back to know what you're talking about, and really contribute value. Make sure it's appropriate. Make sure it's going to actually work towards the goal of the meeting, and achieving the goal of the meeting, or the project, or whatever it is you're working on, whatever the conversation is about. So really contribute value. Okay. And then finally, my note says here, be strategically effective. So, okay, what I mean by that is that you're going to find, again, this goes back to really paying attention to the dynamics of the individual person and the way the group works. And so there are some groups that work really well, and you can tell, and you can see, if you just pay a little bit of attention, you can see how people interact, and how people how they act when they're open to working as a team, and working towards the goal, and respecting individual contributions, etc. And you can see when they're closed. You can tell by their demeanor when people aren't really receptive. So a key thing to making meetings work well, and for you to be effective in the meetings, is to really be strategic about how you communicate, when you communicate, and if you communicate. Okay, so with the contributing, they say contribute to meetings, speak your mind. There's no point in contributing your pearls of wisdom if the people in the meeting are not going to receive them. All right, if it's not going to be effective. So really learn, in whichever group of people you're working with, Learn the dynamics of how people work individually, how they are just as a person, how they like things to happen around them, and also how they work together, how the group works. And once you get to know that, you can then begin to think, okay, well, what's the best way for me to get my message across and also have it actually be acted upon? All right. So it's going to take some practice, but it's going to be super helpful and it will relieve a lot of stress if you relax, sit back, watch what goes on first, see how people interact, see the dynamic, and formulate, okay, how am I with my personality and my skills right now? How am I going to contribute my value in the most effective manner? Okay. Um, that's going to help you be noticed as well. So the and one thing I want to really emphasize here is that um, so many of my students are business folks and they worry about their level of English and I'm not going to be able to communicate what I want to say. If you follow these observational tips that I'm giving you, and if you pay attention, and if you remember the cultural characteristics of doing business with Americans. So in other words, if you think in the English mindset and you observe the the things I just said about observing people and the dynamics and how they work, the language, you'll be able to work whatever level of language you have into that, and you will be effective. So don't be afraid of your language level, okay? Don't be afraid that you're not 100% fluent right now. If you incorporate the language level that you have with those other things, people will notice you and your contributions, regardless of the language barrier at that point. Okay. So, really, this is a great example of what I mean by that 360-degree view of fluency. All right. So, understanding all these interpersonal things and the cultural background and the cultural development of, why a particular set of people interacts and acts the way they do is all part of your fluency. So the words will come, the mechanics of the language will come, but don't neglect this part of it because this is all part of your fluency. Okay. So I have gone a lot longer than I planned on going, but I just really think this is important. And again, this is your livelihood. If you're learning English because you need it for your job, or you want to your current job, or you're trying to get a better job, um, this is your livelihood, so I didn't want to skimp on this one. And I do have a bonus here. And I have said this in other in blog posts, podcasts, and other of these level up your English live streams. Jargon. I hate jargon. I'm just going to tell you that right now. You can't avoid it. So you need to understand the jargon that's used around you in your office. There's general business jargon out there. Excuse me. And then each office has their own, industries have their own sets of jargon and things like that. So you need to understand it. So definitely listen up and get to know what people mean when they say certain things. Um, when they say, "Oh, let's circle back on that," or I don't even know anymore. I've just really, I can't stand jargon. Um, but get to know what it means, but just don't use it. avoid it at all costs if you can. If there's any other way to say the same thing, just don't use jargon, because more often than not, the people who use jargon are people who are insecure, and they're trying to cover up a sense of what they lack. Most people that I have encountered who use jargon, unless it's like critical for your job and your industry, and you're talking to people in the industry, and this particular jargon encompasses a major thought processes, that just jargon for that reason was invented to cut down on the time needed to talk about it. Unless that's the case, which I'm not in an industry that is the case, so I haven't experienced that. The people that seem to use jargon, in my experience, are people who don't know what they're talking about, and so all they talk in is jargon. And people can see through it. They know they don't know what they're talking about. The other people in the room know that this person has no idea, because all they're doing is talking in jargon. Okay? Number one. Number two, jargon is so heavily used that people just tune out and they don't listen. They don't listen to your message. And if you have something to say, find your own words. So this is a great exercise for you to do. Write down all the jargon that you hear. Like I said, circle back, and you know, I just had a bunch of them the, in my head. I can't think of them. I'll try to find them and put them in the comments. There's actually, I think I mentioned this in the last one. There is a comedian out there who has his finger on the pulse of this jargon thing and office talk and stuff. I'll try to put a link to his Instagram account in the comments, to give you an idea. But write down all the jargon that you hear in the office, and then find out what it means. Get familiar with it, and then go look up another way to say it. Write down 3 other ways that you can say, that you can get across the message of the jargon. So circle back means all right, we're here and we need to circle back around to this and talk about it later, basically, is all you're talking about. That's what you're saying. So instead of saying, oh, we'll circle back on that, why don't you just say, we'll talk about it later? Or better yet, we can talk about that on Tuesday at the 9:00 meeting. That makes you sound so much more professional, so much more on top of things, and so much more committed to solving the problem. Excuse me. So I hope that helped you. When you just say, "Oh yeah, we'll have to circle back on that," you're basically dismissing the problem. And yeah, we'll get to it later, is basically what you're saying. Whereas if you say, we need to talk about this later, I don't have time now, we need to talk about this later, how about, and then give a day and time, that shows you're serious, and that's going to make people stand up and think. Okay. So anyway, those are the main things that I wanted to talk to you about. Let me just make sure I covered everything. Yeah, that's it. So basically here, to recapture what we've just talked about, is whether it be just in your talking back and forth in the office, whether you're writing emails, or whether you're in meetings, it's all about giving the essentials up front, business first, personal stuff later, relationship building later, for the reasons that I explained. And then so you're direct down to business, essentials up front. Tell me what I need to know in order to make my decision. And don't waste my time with lots of language or, fancy stuff that isn't you. Just be yourself. We're not here in business to be entertained, so I don't need all of this stuff. Be yourself, tell it to me straight, and get to the point. Let's get our business done, and then we can talk and be social later, that kind of a thing. So, and that again is whether you're talking to someone, whether, about business stuff. If it's, social talk in the office, that's different. That's social English, and we'll get to that. Or whether it's emails, clear, concise, free of emotion. And again, don't try to be clever or fancy. Use the words you've got, use the words you know, build your vocabulary and add those in, but use the words that are right for the job, okay, to get your message across as clearly as you can. And show respect and be professional. And that means being on time and contributing value, not just fluff. And again, learn to take in the whole thing. Again, fluency has to do with the person as well as the language, how the person, how the culture, the people act and react, and all the things that go into that, not just the mechanics of the language. So don't skip that. All right. Pay attention and use what you're learning that way too. Okay. Oh my goodness. Again, this is a topic that can go on. This is just such a rich topic. So next week is the last one, and we'll be talking. We're still going to be doing business English basics, but we're going to be talking about the specialized vocabulary, which really is the jargon and office related and business related vocabulary. So that will be the last one for the year. And then we'll get back to it. And I think it's the second week in January, but certainly by the third week in January. So, all right. So we'll see you at noon, though, today. We will be going over these things, and maybe I'm going to try to have some of the jargon in there, and I'm going to try to add the link to that comedian. So just so you can get an idea of how ridiculous it can sound when people, because you end up with the jargon, you can end up talking in just a string of jargon, and it means nothing to anybody. And people see through it. So anyway, okay. So we will see you at noon today. And then we'll definitely see you next week at midnight. Okay. All right. I hope you have a wonderful week. And even if you're watching the replay, ask me your questions in the comments, and I will make sure that they're answered either live or in the comments. Okay. All right. So we'll see you at noon and on next week. All right. Bye-bye. Enjoy.